Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi. We've got a great guest today, and I know people love reflections on the afterlife, and we're going to talk to an expert in this field and, a personal expert and someone who's started a wonderful foundation. But before we get started, I wanted to remind you all that, I want to say loneliness is one of the biggest problems we have in this country today. And if you're out there and you've lost a partner, I want to remind you that my new book, written with my fiance, Dr. Frank Powers, Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating, is now available on Amazon. So if, like me, you lost a spouse or a partner and you're looking for love, please pick up our book, Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating. And I also want to remind you that 100% of the proceeds for this book go to the Open to Hope Foundation with the mission of helping people find hope after loss. Well, Heidi, would you like to introduce our guest today? Very excited about having her on.
Sure, I'd love to. And she's been on before and she's doing amazing things to help people find hope after loss. And we are going to be talking, like you said, about the reflections on the afterlife. So our guest today is Elizabeth Boisson. She is the president and co-founder of Helping Parents Heal, an international nonprofit that supports parents whose children have passed. She has 4 children, 2 of whom are in spirit. Chelsea passed when she was just 2 days old in France, and Morgan transitioned at the base camp of Mount Everest in Tibet. Elizabeth publishes a monthly newsletter for Helping Parents Heal and is the author of the book, Life to Afterlife, Helping Parents Heal the Book. Welcome to our podcast, Elizabeth.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here and to be with you two beautiful ladies. And I am very excited about reading your book, Gloria, because that's wonderful that you've written it. And I know that it's going to be an enormous help to so many people. And I can think of a lot of people who are in our group already. And I'm going to need to make sure that it's available to them as well.
Talk to us a little bit about Chelsea and Morgan, because of reflections on the afterlife, how you got to where you are.
I would love to. I love speaking about my kids, and it's certainly a sad story, but at the same time, it's very happy at this because both of them, first of all, have allowed me to meet so many incredible people in this grief and afterlife community. But more importantly, I feel them with me all the time. And Chelsea passed in France, as you had said, when she was only 2 days old. I had been in the hospital for 2 months on an IV because I was having contractions. And so I unfortunately lost my water and I was unable to hold on to her any longer. And she was born by cesarean and only survived for 2 days because her lungs had been crushed. It was one of the most difficult things in my life, but at the time, Morgan was 2 years old and he was living with my mother-in-law. My husband was very, very busy at the time. He was traveling. And so I missed Morgan so much. And being able to be back with Morgan, to get back home after this very difficult event really saved me. And not only being with Morgan, but also the practices that I kind of put into place when I was living in India before that. I had lived there for quite some time. And so I was meditating and I was doing yoga, and all of those things really helped. But the really amazing thing in this whole afterlife reflection came when Morgan transitioned, and he transitioned 18 years later when he was 20 years old at the base camp of Mount Everest. Morgan had been studying in Nanjing in China. He was on a study abroad program, and he asked us if he could go to Hong Kong because he had friends who were living there at the time. He had already studied in China 2 years before, and these friends had gone back to live in Hong Kong, and he wanted to meet them. But I was worried that he might have trouble getting back into China with his visa. And so the whole group was going to Tibet, and they had studied Tibet, they'd studied the culture, they'd studied the economy, and they were very excited about going with two of their professors. And so Morgan asked if he could go with all of these other students. So there were 14 total, 13 others besides Morgan. And we thought that sounded wonderful. They took off, flew to Lhasa at 11,000 feet. And then the next day they started up the mountain and they went up to 19,000 feet in just 2 days' time, which is much too fast. All of the kids were having, well, they had altitude sickness. They were throwing up, they were actually urinating on themselves in the bus, but no one recognized these signs because of the fact that they were kind of delirious as they were going up the mountain. They had a Chinese tour guide who was really wanting to get them up to the base camp by nightfall, which makes sense because they needed to get to shelter. But at the same time, the higher that they went, the worse it got. And when Morgan got up to the base camp, he had a terrible migraine, and he took a NyQuil, which was the only thing that he had for pain, with him, and he went to bed. And they were sleeping in a yurt, which is a big tent where it's all open and people see each other. And Morgan, during the night, was getting up and sleepwalking and calling people by the wrong name. It probably wasn't sleepwalking. He was probably just delirious. And so by the time that morning came, one of the students tried to wake him up, and he was foaming at the mouth, and it was 9 o'clock. They needed to go, and he couldn't get him to wake up. So he called his mom, and his mom is a doctor in Washington State. And she said, get him down the mountain as quickly as you can. And so these kids who were, there were 13 of them, loaded my son, who was 280 pounds, 6'6", onto the bus to get him ready to go down the mountain. He still hadn't woken up. In the meantime, the director of the program called me and said that he had heard that Morgan wasn't well, that they were taking him down the mountain to get him down in altitude. And if I wanted to speak to his roommate, he had his number. And of course, I wanted to speak to Morgan's roommate. I called him immediately. And when I called him, Colin told me, Miss Boisson, it doesn't look good. He stopped breathing. We've taken him off the bus and he's on the ground. We're trying CPR on him, but these kids didn't really know CPR. And I don't think he's going to make it. So I asked him to put the phone up to his ear. And I told Morgan that we loved him, that we were proud of him, and not to be afraid. And at that moment, I felt the biggest bear hug from Morgan. And
Wow.
he was in Tibet. I'm here in Cave Creek, Arizona. I was sitting next to my husband. I know I closed my eyes and I think I put my hands to my chest. My husband said, oh my gosh, can I speak to Morgan? Because he thought everything was okay. I was in a state of incredible bliss at that moment. I knew that Morgan was still alive. I knew that love lives forever. And I felt that every single parent who had a child transition probably experienced the same thing. Of course, having him transition was incredibly difficult, but this feeling stayed with me in the beginning of this whole journey towards healing. And every time that I would start to feel sad, I'd feel him hugging me from the inside again. And it's lasted up until now. I feel like Morgan is always with me. And I now realize that Chelsea is with me as well. And if I could just go a little bit further in the story, because this is something that happened after I was speaking to a medium, and she told me that the reason that I got that hug, which not all of us get, and I know that it's frustrating if you don't have something like this happen, this type of shared death experience, is because Chelsea was the first person to meet Morgan when he reached the other side. And she grabbed his hand and led him to me to give me that hug.
Wow, that's powerful. That's emotional.
Yep, it is. And what you've gone on to do in the name of your kids is just kind of amazing, with starting helping parents heal. The idea of transitioning, the idea of being in touch with our kids, that kind of thing can be controversial, to say the least. So before you, there was really no national organization where people could come together who had that kind of afterlife belief, right?
Well, and I must say, I didn't have any belief system in place before this happened. I didn't necessarily believe in mediums. I didn't believe in this whole afterlife idea. But having that shared death experience with Morgan changed all of that. So I searched for groups where I could speak about these things that were happening to me with Morgan. And it wasn't just that shared death experience. He was making himself known in so many ways throughout our house, through his friends, through so many things that were happening at the time. It was very magical. And I tried to speak about this in different support groups that I would attend, and people were saying, no, we don't talk about that. So I would go out to the parking lot and there would be people mobbing me and saying, I've had the same thing happening to me. Tell me more about that. And so I started the Facebook group for Helping Parents Heal a week after Morgan transitioned, not because I wanted to
How
start.
long has that been?
It was in 2009, so October 20th of 2009. And as I say, I wasn't necessarily wanting to start a group. I wanted to just talk with other parents and meet other parents who had had this experience. But I found a need and I started the group, and then started having in-person meetings about 2 months later. And we've continued those in-person meetings every month here, but also then expanded to throughout the country and then throughout the world. And we now have caring listeners who are volunteer parents who have gone down the healing path a bit further and who reach a hand back to help others forward. And we now have 13 different languages that are spoken by these caring listeners. So Arabic, Chinese, both Mandarin and Cantonese, as well as South
Oh,
African.
you're finding it in every culture. Let me ask you something. I know that rather than death, you use transition. Can you talk about that a little bit? And how did you get that idea and that word? And
That's really kind of you to ask. I feel that our kids in spirit are more alive than we are. They are happy, healthy, and home. We're still in school. We have a lot to learn here. And I feel that every single day is an opportunity to be able to help someone. And one of the things that I have learned about healing is that helping others helps us more than it does the others. And I know that you both have made that a science. Both of you understand that more than anything. And being open to hope, being open to gratitude, waking up filled with gratitude, realizing that you have so much opportunity to change other people's lives is such an enormous gift for me.
your son's been transitioned for 5 years, right? About 5 years?
No, for almost 15.
Oh, almost 15 years. Okay. You started your Facebook page right after, or a year after, or 2
A
years?
week after. A
Week
week after.
Now, one of the things that I want to say about this, and I want to get your thought in, is that my son died 40 years ago. I can't even believe it, in an automobile crash with his cousin. And my husband died 3 years ago, going on 4. And I have been able to meet a partner and write a book with him. He's a psychologist as I am. But the point I want to make is, for those of you who we had an early loss, which I think does change you. I mean, you've taken the trip, but you know you're going to take it again, the grief trip, with your second big loss. But the second time around, I knew 2 things. I knew I would live, because I think there are parents who are like, wow, she went out and did that so fast. And, well, you already knew that you would live because you'd had a traumatic loss, and you don't think you're going to live through that first one for sure. And secondly, I knew I'd be happy again,
Yes.
which is kind of 2 amazing things. So
That-
I want to say to people, not everybody's going to function this well right after the death of a child.
No, and you don't have to. And I really think that it's important for everyone to understand that everyone's healing journey is different. And I am very different from everyone else. And I realize that I'm this way for a reason. I have to be this way because I was actually set up to be this way with Chelsea transitioning before Morgan, because I think that there was a need for people to understand that our kids are not gone, that they're still right here, that all of our loved ones who have transitioned are. And going back to transitioned and death, I think it's fine to say death because it is a physical death, but at the same time, we like to use the word transition because helping parents heal kind of has a new language, a new way of saying things. So we don't call ourselves bereaved parents, we call ourselves shining light parents because the light of our children shines through us. And we truly believe that. This came from Suzanne Giesman, who meditated and decided that this was a really nice way of saying what we're experiencing, which is very different from being a bereaved parent. Bereaved is one of the saddest words in the dictionary, and we don't really like using it. But transitioned is a much softer and kinder way of saying the way that they have passed. We also say past because transitioned can be confusing as well. We could also say changed worlds, which is also something that we believe. But we also say that we haven't lost our kids, that they're still with us. Instead of saying lost, we say that our kids are still right here. So all of these things help in the healing journey too, because words are so powerful. I believe that words, the way that we speak about our own experience is something that not only affects the other people who are listening to us, but also our own lives. So having a softer, gentler way of saying it is something that we really enjoy, and I think that it does help.
I just am struck by how fast this has grown. There was such a need for it, obviously. And like you said, that voice wasn't out there, and a lot of organizations didn't want that to be part of their, their voice. Is everybody in your family and everybody in your world on the same page, or is there ever a time where somebody maybe doesn't hold the same belief?
That's a really good question. And I think that it's important for people to understand that your friend group is probably going to shift when you have a child pass or transition. Your family might not be as close to you as they were before this happened. Some family members will become even closer. Some might just move away. And in example, my sister, who probably loves Morgan almost as much as I do, told me the first year after Morgan transitioned, I just can't be with you. I can't spend time with you because I loved Morgan too much. And seeing you reminds me of Morgan. And my mother, when she would come to our house, I put up more pictures than ever of Morgan. And she said, it just makes me sad to see these pictures of Morgan. And I completely understand that. But it's obviously changed since then, and we've become very close. But I think that for us, we need to find our tribe. We need to find the people who understand us, because not all of our friends will understand. And for us at Helping Parents Heal, we feel that the people who understand us the most are the ones who have had either a child transition or another beloved family member transition, because I think that it changes us, almost chemically changes us. We become completely different people. And it it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be something that is, again, as I say, almost magical, because we start to see our children in every aspect of our lives. We realize that they're helping us to move forward and heal. And they're also helping us to help others. They're bringing other people to us who need to be able to be
So,
healed.
so to a certain extent, Elizabeth, your kids are with you even more now that they have passed, because they can be. I mean, they can be with you in spirit. And it's interesting because we go to a lot of conferences around the country and with different organizations. There's something so light and positive about your conference, which really struck me the first time I went.
Thank
And
you.
and I think it's the idea of, okay, they're still with us. They've, passed. They're not gone to us.
I agree. And I must say that there were a lot of dads at that conference that you attended who were skeptical about going to this conference, because they felt that they were, first of all, going kicking and screaming, but they found so much camaraderie with the other dads that were there. And they all wore buttons that said, ask me about the dads group. And now they're writing a book about all of their experiences and the healing trajectory, and how Helping Fathers Heal has helped them to move forward and heal.
Amazing. Well, Elizabeth, I want to say to everyone, go to her website because there's so much good information, and talk about inspiring stories. I mean, it's on and on with incredible stories, and these people are solid people. I mean, it's really interesting, and a wonderful community and a wonderful group. And I want to thank you so much for being on the show. You're having a conference this summer.
Yes, we are. And we have some incredible speakers. Many of them are the same as last year and even as the first conference. We're excited that you all will be there as well. We have Suzanne Giesman, who always has been at our conferences, Mark Anthony, Maureen Hancock will be joining us, and this is new. Anita Marjani is going to be there, James Van Prague, Dr. Mary Neal, Jeffrey Olson, Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll, Dr. Gary Schwartz, Gordon Smith, and Suzanne Wilson are our keynote speakers. And then we have 44 presenters in all. So we have a lot of people who are going to be presenting, and a lot of groups that are specifically for siblings. We also have groups that are going to be specifically for dads, as well as special interest groups. So we have groups specifically for parents who have had children transition by suicide. We have special groups for parents who have had children transition from substance use, and then other groups as well. But it's important to understand that we don't differentiate at all in terms of exit points for children. The only reason that we have these groups is because parents have asked for them. They feel that society actually kind of treats them in a different way because of the fact that their children have transitioned in a certain way. So they like to be able to get together and talk about coping solutions for that kind of thing.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and give us your website, and you can get her book, I'm sure, on Amazon, right? Life to Afterlife, Helping Parents Heal the book.
I always make sure that it's free to download. So make sure that you look to see if it's free
Wow,
at the time that you're
awesome.
looking at it. And all of the proceeds go back to helping parents heal as well. And yes, the website is www.helpingparentsheal.org. And we also have many Facebook sites that are available that start with Helping Parents Heal, and then the location or the special interest name after that.
Oh, thank you so much for being on our show. It's such a delight to see you, as always.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to speak to both of you, and I appreciate being invited to speak, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, we look forward to your conference this summer and to connecting with all your members. And thank you so much for doing so much to help people find hope again.
Thank you both as well.
Heidi and I always want to remind you, and the Open to Hope Foundation wants to remind you, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.